My wife's hormones have me scared for my family's safety. She just threw a cup of coffee at my head and it landed me in the ER. My wife, 45F, and I, 50M, have been married for almost 20 years. We have a 16-year-old daughter and life has been pretty good. We've had our ups and downs like any marriage, but we work together through it. We have even done marriage counseling a couple of times to get ourselves on the right track, mostly dealing with real life stuff and feeling like roommates. When it comes to household chores, I've always cleaned the house, as I'm a bit OCD with cleaning due to growing up in a house with roaches as a kid. She takes care of the laundry and we split making dinners on days I'm off, as I work 12 hours a day for 4 days a week. Everything sounds great on paper, but here lies the issue. My wife is going through perimenopause. She's been super emotional and a bit unlike herself for the last 6 months or so. She is taking meds to help even out her hormones, but it's taking time. One day she is overly nice, but the next day it's nothing but complaining about every little thing and getting all bent out of shape. So yesterday morning was one of her bad days. I forgot to set up the coffee pot to make coffee in the morning. When I went down, she was all bent out of shape over it. I tried my normal tactic of apologizing, as I had a migraine and went to bed early and just forgot. I told her I would make coffee in a bit as I just woke up and needed a little time to get the morning fog out of my head, which is a typical thing for me in the morning as she knows. She didn't like this answer, so as I went to sit on the couch, she threw her coffee cup at me, causing it to smash into my head, breaking and splitting my head open. At first I was furious that she actually threw something at me, but then I felt liquid going down my neck. I put my hand on it and pulled it back to take a look and assumed it was coffee, but then I saw the red. Of course, at the sight of this, my wife all of a sudden freaked out, screamed at my daughter to get a towel, all the while apologizing to me and crying, stating she was sorry. We headed to the ER and our daughter drove as my wife couldn't, as she was a hot mess. Luckily, it wasn't so deep that it needed stitches, and they used the glue stuff. The thing is, I had a rough childhood and home life. I was physically messed up by my mom all the way up until I left at 18. My wife knows this, and when she did what she did, it brought back all those memories so long ago forgotten. I love my wife, but I swore to myself that I would never be in a place where I'd be hurt like I was when I was a kid ever again. My mind has really been leaning back and forth towards the thought of divorce. I know her hormones are partially to blame, but I also know she's an adult and responsible for her actions. Update: I took some time to cool off, as I clearly was still mad about the situation. I took my daughter and we went for a drive. We talked about the incident and asked her how she felt. Much like most of the responses here, we agreed that it would be a good idea to leave the house for a bit until her mom's mental issues have been resolved or her meds are adjusted. We headed back home, and I asked my wife to come down so we could have a family meeting, as she'd been hiding in our bedroom since we came home from the hospital. She came down and clearly felt awful. She looked like she hadn't stopped crying since the incident. We both hugged her and told her we loved her but we needed to talk. I told her for at least this week and maybe next week, we were going to stay at my sister's place. She could stay in the house as she works from home and can't go into the office. She started to cry again, so I waited for her to compose herself. I let her know what she did crossed a huge line in my book. I reminded her of my childhood and that although this was outside of her normal behavior, it has caused a rift in our marriage. But I was willing to give her this one-time pass. However, she has to go see her doctor first thing to tell her everything that happened, everything she was feeling, and not to sugarcoat anything so that her doctor can get her the right meds so that this never happens again. As many of you mentioned, it would be dumb of me to throw away 20 years for a one-time screw-up. Although it was a huge screw-up, I think it's something we can work through. I told her that we need to set up an appointment with a marriage counselor again, and that this is going to take work on both our parts to move forward. I also told her that if she ever did anything like that again, I would file for divorce and take our daughter with me. That her and my safety were my #1 priority. She apologized several times during the talk. She tried telling us that she's all messed up with her hormones and the meds and she didn't mean to. That when she threw it, it was like as soon as it left her hand she knew she regretted it. I let her know that we understand she's going through a lot, but that her hormonal issues are never an excuse for acting out and intentionally throwing stuff at me. I told her that she's an adult and she's responsible for her own actions. Blaming it on hormones or meds or other BS wasn't gonna cut it. I did get a bit heated at this point, but she at least acknowledged this and apologized again. So this is where we are at this point. We are at my sister's place now as I write this, but I'm optimistic that we'll get through this.